I'd like to see us get this up and going because we're getting a lot of interest now, and we do have some property owners that may be interested in the conservation easement on their property. We want to make it known. We encourage that, and if they were willing to do it, we'd find a way of working with them and making it work. So we've had this out now since the 28th of July. So maybe we just go right to the discussion on it. Heidi, have you got anything you want to, would you please?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity. Can I approach and...
Oh, sure. We're real informal.
Okay, well,
Thank you for being here and having some info for us. So.
of course, these are just suggestions.
Especially at our work meeting.
Well, because our airport meeting was canceled. We did a great big project, and now we are going to do... Did you... extra copies too for the other members. So we discussed it briefly. Perhaps there was not a lot of opposition from the city council on this. We didn't take a vote, but we wrote down these comments, and we'd like you to consider perhaps some revisions. In section 2, parentheses 2, we're going to suggest that all of the entities should approve the board's work, not just the county council. Oh, of course. And of course you can see where we're coming from on the city, that we're equal in signing this agreement, we're equal in pretty much in providing people to the board, and we feel like the board's work is so important that all of the entities should be able to approve the board's work. And then we'd also like to make the suggestion in section 3A6 that each city should appoint their own board members. That's already in there. But then there is the part of the county appointing the members if the cities aren't fast enough. And we think that the cities will be fast enough. We're very interested in this issue. And if we're not going to appoint our own board members, then obviously we're not going to participate. But that's the worst case scenario. And we feel like each city should appoint their own board members. And then in section 4, and we can stop or discuss any of this.
Why don't you go through them all and let's go back and on each one of them.
In section 4, you're suggesting in the agreement that percentages could be given to each municipality through their own open lands board, but we're wondering if that could be specified according to what kind of distribution. A suggestion here is that maybe that distribution could be done according to the property tax percentages from each entity. Again, we're just trying to make this fair for everybody and make sure that we know up front how that could happen. Not that it would happen every time, but that if it did happen, as the board works through their procedures, then we know the formula, right? And then in section 5, we're going to suggest that only private, reputable easement organizations be specified to hold the conservation easements. This is something that Steve and I found out a long time ago when we worked through the interlocal agreement years ago, that if the easements are given to the landowners, they hold them, or they're given to the government entities, and that puts incredible pressure to break the easement. Puts pressure on the government entity to eventually develop the land when that's not the purpose here. It puts pressure on the private landowner. We had a case where we had private open space held by a private landowner, and then the landowner came back 10 years later and wanted to develop it, even though it said open space on the plat. And the property ombudsman backed up the private landowner, and we lost that open space, even though that was part of the agreement. So we just suggest that there should be no privately held easements by landowners or by the government entities, but reputable third-party easement organizations.
Okay, we start with number 2, the first one. Suggest that Wasatch County, Heber City, and Midway City shall all approve the board's work. That could be done, but it would really make it cumbersome.
It would.
You know the problem we have getting together and getting some kind of commitment out.
I
We would
understand.
hope that the representative would keep each board apprised of what's going on. If there's an issue, that board should bring it back to the Open Lands Board. Or if it's a big enough issue, then we could bring in the
Do we have to?
I'm afraid that we've slowed the process way down.
And that's not the point of asking this. That's not the point. The point is to make sure that all the entities are being treated equally by the Open Lands Board. I mean, we discussed that issue years ago, Steve, right? That we wanted the county to do it, to not slow it down. But I feel like this is an important enough issue for Midway. They certainly have shown that. They're not going to slow it down. I feel like it's an important enough issue for Heber City now because of all the growth pressures.
All right, what happens if one entity don't want to do it?
Then you've got to put something in there that it reverts back to maybe this percentage breakdown. And that whatever entity doesn't want to participate with the WOLP priorities, they want to do their own priorities, well then they'll get a certain percentage breakdown of the bond based on perhaps their property tax percentage. And then they can use it the way that they want. We hope that they would approve the priorities that we discussed over a decade ago on the North Fields, that should be the first priority. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. I would think the Open Lands Board would still say that the North Fields, the conservation easements out there would probably be the first priority for
Well,
open
and
space
I think
easements.
when we did that study back, we kind of left it up. If an entity had a priority,
We
we
did.
would look at it. It wouldn't be, we wouldn't be closed-minded about what.
Right, exactly.
I kind of like the idea of having them approve them just because I just do. I think it can slow it down more than 30 days. And if we're in that big of a hurry, then, I mean, we've all got several meetings a month, more than 2. I don't mind it. I almost like the fact that it comes back to the whole group.
How do you do that, though? I mean, I understand that Heber and Midway are the 2 biggest entities, but there are 5 other entities in the county that
I
aren't getting
didn't
a say.
realize that. I didn't realize that. In the agreement, it just specifies Heber and Midway and county, but
But
you've
it's
gone
every
to
town
Daniel
in the
and...
county is involved.
That's certainly who I would guess is the 3 major entities: the county, the unincorporated Heber and Midway. But you're right. There's Independence and there's Hideout and there's Daniel.
Daniels, Walford.
Charleston.
Are you planning to put them specifically on the board?
I don't
Because
think
thought
we
it was
were.
just the 3 of
So
those.
We're just representing them as members of the
Yeah.
county.
I'm not suggesting the other entities then.
The other 2, that's why the county has 2 representatives.
Okay.
They represent all the other non-entities.
That would solve any issue that the entities Midway and Heber felt like they didn't have, or someone didn't have enough, because it has to come back to the whole approval anyway.
Well, that's what we're suggesting.
Yeah, I don't mind. I think that's fair. We could certainly hold it up if someone had a problem, but we want to make sure everybody's on the same page anyway.
That was my goal. I mean, not mine, but the goal here.
But are you ever going to
Sorry, I
get
didn't-
all 3 entities to agree? I guess is the
Well,
question.
that's a good point.
So I can imagine a scenario, having been to some of Midway's meetings, and I know they're very, very interested in open space, and they want to have their own board, and make their own priorities. And I can imagine a scenario where Midway City or someone else might feel so strongly about something that is Midway-centric that they just oppose everything else and just stop something because they disagree with it.
Gosh, I would hope not. You know,
But see, that's where-
yes, it can happen, but I would certainly hope that.
Yeah, the thing is, Heber City, for example, is the largest,
Oh, for the record, Mr. Good is here.
sorry, I'm trying to,
No, you're good. We excuse you, so I
the
won't.
largest city, okay, the largest city in the county. On the county council, you have 3 representatives for Heber City. You have Spencer Park, who covers a portion of Heber City, Kendall Cretton, who covers a portion of Heber City, and myself. So,
Plus 2 at large that everyone in the city gets to vote
right,
for as
so
well.
Heber City has 3 representatives plus a portion of 2 of the at-larges on the county council. And part of the problem, I guess, that we have is that Heber wants to have a bigger say. If I'm understanding section 4, and maybe I missed the first discussion on it.
That's the part about how the bond could be divided by municipality, but there wasn't any way to do that.
That just finishes up.
Well, I think it was related because if I understood you were saying if there's a disagreement, then we revert to the percentages of property tax.
It's just an option. It's a way to say, okay, if Midway wants to do their own thing, or Heber wants to do their own thing, then how would we let them
Well,
do their own thing?
let me explain section 4 why I put in.
Okay.
and it came from Midway. Midway said, if we have our own open space committee, and we work on the same criteria as the county, then we would, and they looked at this and came up with that, and we had a piece of property that we felt was essential to our municipality, and it didn't, the rest of them didn't. Could we ask for a percentage of the bond based on our taxable contribution and use that to buy this piece of property?
See, I was wondering, and just, this is another tangent, sorry, but when that bond goes out, whatever the bond amount is, it's only going to be coming in a lump sum. It's not going to be a year-to-year
Right.
disbursement back to us.
Yeah, right.
And so that's perhaps a chunk of money right up front that would be then gone, right?
Other than the fact that, Heidi, we might go out in increments on the bond.
Okay.
Maybe if we get an approval for 15 million, do them in 5 million increments
Over time?
over time.
Why would we distribute out the bonds to different municipalities? I thought that was part of the Open Land Board, was
Well,
to
if
see
they-
the biggest need in the whole county in whole.
If they create their own open lands board, and it works under the same criteria as the county, and they present it to the county, and the county agrees that is an essential piece of property to purchase,
But see, would the county agree through the board or through you?
the board.
To the board,
Bring
okay.
it to the county council.
Okay.
Well, the county council has the ultimate say.
Yes.
The board
Well,
would
that's
invite
what-
the council.
But that's what
Yeah.
Heidi's saying, is that not just the county council, but also Heber City and Midway City.
No, and I understand that.
Well, I think the ultimate decision would be the county council, because we're the ones issuing the bond, not the cities.
So then the question, I'm curious about that too, is would we, let's say that Midway, or let's say Huebler, said, hey, we've decided we've got this priority piece of land over here and we want $1 million for it. Then would the county council approve a transfer to Heber City? Or would the county council then put that money in escrow or put that into an entity that would go purchase it, not directly transfer it to Heber's budget?
Direct the open land board, that's a piece of property that's essential.
So the Open Lands Board would, so the money wouldn't transfer to Heber's budget?
No.
Okay, that was the clarification I
But,
wanted.
but back to what Steve said earlier, when Midway was talking about this, when Steve and I were there, I mean, they specifically said, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, if we create our own Midway City, recall that they had some discussion at least about doing their own bond, their own open
Oh, yeah.
bond. But they said, they specifically asked the question, if we have our own board, our own priorities, and then we bring that to the Open Lands Board, the county's Open Lands Board, and then that discussion immediately went to, well, if we have X percent of the property tax, or however it's divided up, then do we essentially have claim on that percentage of that money to be spent in Midway?
Right.
But they're getting value, I'm a little bit worried about this in a way, because say Heber or Midway picks a field that, hey, we want to preserve. Well, that field is already inside of a municipality and has entitlements that make it kind of like Bonanza Flat, a lot harder to preserve. And the Open Land Board would be way better prioritized to buy land in the North Field for the bang for our buck. And that, I guess that's where I'm worried about. You can understand that. The field you guys have annexed, it's got entitlements that could make it 5 times the value, or we could only get 10% of the open space that we could if we bought it in the North Field, which would benefit Heber and Midway and everybody in the
All
county.
right, let me read that section pertaining to bond sharing based on taxable value. The intent of the Open Lands Board is to identify open space priorities that will be beneficial for the residents of the county. Participating municipalities may have different priorities than the Open Land Board, county, or other municipalities. This agreement hereby authorizes a percentage of the bond revenue based on taxable value to be used by the individual municipality with the following requirements. The municipality must have a functioning open space board appointed by the legislative body that will make recommendations to the Wasatch Open Land Board. Provide a member of the appointed open space committee to serve on the Open Lands Board. and that would be their representative. The municipality must have adopted open space maps identifying priorities for open space purchases. The map shall prioritize open space areas that will provide some of the following. The greater amount of benefit to county residents is not just a limited number, and not just a limited number. Provide significant public use, connect to a network of open space through public trails, preserve historical or cultural buildings or ground deemed important in municipalities. Taxable value will be determined by the county council based on tax assessment numbers and updated as needed.
So I think we were talking about the same thing there.
Yeah.
And I'm
But
sorry I
I'm
didn't
saying,
catch that as much.
that's saying that this open lands board will come up with criteria, and hopefully the municipalities, if they create their own open land board, go further enough to do that,
Okay.
will set the same priorities.
And that was a question the mayor had. He's saying, is this forcing us to do an open space board within our city or not? He thought.
You have the option.
Right, he thought it meant you had to do it to get the money, but it's only if you want a different priority than the open
Well,
lands
no,
board.
I'm sorry, the way I understood it is, if you want if they want the money, they do have to create a board
Yes.
based on the criteria. So, yes, they do have to
But that
create a
doesn't
board.
mean that the open lands board won't recognize a piece
Right.
of property within the municipality that qualifies.
Right, so Heber may be happy with what the Open Lands Board does and says, we don't need to go through the process of creating our own
Right.
If the
board.
priorities align.
Right, if they want it.
Okay. Well, then I don't know if we need to specify the property tax percentage like I had suggested here in section 4. So now it's just a matter of, do we just let the county council approve everything and hope that the representatives from the entities can convince their own councils? Or if not, they go to their own open land?
See, that's my worry too, and it's not that I don't think we can.
Fine with changing it under the condition that we find it so cumbersome that nothing will work. We can go back and amend it.
I understand that.
Because you could have a member on your board that has a totally different,
Yes. We know. You're right.
we've all seen it before, where there's a handful of folks who view things just a little differently. Open space, all things, including us.
I'd
So-
rather leave it the way we got it, with the understanding if you've got a real issue with it, come to the open land board and the county and say this, we don't want to do it because of this.
Steve, how many members are on the Open Land Board?
7.
Well, what-
So you need 4, I'm sorry, but you need 14.
Oh, sorry.
Excuse me.
No, I was just
Recognize.
going to suggest a kick-out clause of some sort, whereas if you cannot come up with a agreement on a certain piece of property, maybe it goes to the vote of the people, maybe, I mean, some
Maybe
other
then it goes to
kick-out,
individual legislative bodies.
well, or,
I like the idea of having everybody approve it. I do, I like that idea. I know that that's not what we drafted and originally was, but if everybody doesn't agree, it's pretty hard to move forward.
Theoretically, Open Land Board, Wasatch County Council, Midway Council, Heber City Council, that's 14 people, or a majority of the 14 have to agree. No, it would have to be all 14 have to agree, because 3 members of Heber City Council would have to agree, 3 members of Midway City Council would have to agree, 4 members of Wasatch County Council would have to agree, and 4 members of the Open Land Board would have to agree. There could be some overlap there, but you'll probably have 10 minimum individuals, up to a maximum of 14 individuals. All 14 must agree.
Then,
That's where Steve was.
I think we're getting it too.
We always agree, so I don't know why you think that's a problem, man.
I think we're getting it too cumbersome to work.
Well, and I don't know what Midway feels on this. I don't know if there's a Midway representative here. I wouldn't be surprised if Midway wouldn't say perhaps the same thing, that they think that everybody should approve these things. I think it's not just even though it might be cumbersome, I think it's a good faith effort to show that to the entities and say, look, we really want to be on the same page. I don't think the 10 to 14
Well, then,
people is
why don't we
impossible.
allow Fallsburg and Charleston?
Then I think you're stretching it.
I mean, no, why are we stretching it? They're citizens, they're gonna be paying the same bond.
Well, are you going to put them on the board? are you going to have them sign it like you're asking Heber City and Midway City? Are you going to ask them to sign this agreement? Because if they do, then yes, I think they should agree to it also.
Well, this agreement really has no teeth other than the fact we agree to cooperate with them.
Agree.
I mean, it's not asking you to put up money, it's not asking you to really do anything other than participate in the process.
Well, please know that the city council would be willing to pass resolutions in favor of the open space bonds. That's what I would try to push for. I'm sure Midway City has already done that. They, be in favor of, putting out that political capital. So I guess it's just a matter of how much cooperation we're trying to get versus efficiency, right?
So
It's always that balance.
On the numbers, that's 25 potential members of all these councils and the board put together. 14 would have to agree to get them the majority. However, one thing that Greg was saying is he likes that you'd have to get that agreement. Out of 30,000 people for the entire county, if you can't get 14 of the representatives to agree, is that a bad thing?
And if it takes an extra month, I don't know that that's
What do you
worth.
think, Steve?
It really depends on the motive behind that municipality. I would think it would be better off having their representative come back to the board, the open land board, as well as the county council, if Heber City don't agree with this. They want to go another direction, and we would not do anything until we got that issue resolved.
Yeah, and if it's
That would be in the bylaws then.
a potential issue, maybe,
We could put it in the bylaws.
one potential issue could be if, let's say, Heber and Midway agree that there's a piece of property that should be preserved, but for whatever reason, Wasatch County Council doesn't think that that's a priority. Then now we hold up the process. Or you can see the combinations and then how much, what Steve's saying about the motivation is sometimes political motivations come into play as opposed to what's in the best interest of everybody. And then,
And sometimes folks just have a different idea of what's in the best interest.
but that's true.
Too.
That's true.
But I
Sometimes we
guarantee
do
you,
know it.
Midway has a different attitude of what Heber does, and they have different pieces they would love to have us buy first.
Sure.
And I,
Yeah, it isn't an easy solution. If it were, we'd already be way down this
It's
road.
taken 10 years.
We're in a good place, yes, exactly.
And you're here talking about it, expressing your opinions, so that's awesome, because that's what we asked for. So thank you.
I can't thank all of you enough for coming this far. This
But
is
I
so
also
exciting.
heard that without that level of commitment both ways, you may or may not be interested in participating, the whole
I
council.
don't think it's a deal breaker, but, we haven't voted on it,
Okay.
right? It was a.
I'd rather see something in the bylaws for the board on how it functions.
And I think that could really go a long ways in preventing these kinds of issues that everybody knows, okay, it's going to happen at the board level before it gets to the entity level.
And to kind of take the political sides out of it.
Hopefully so.
I think the other thing is we're assuming that there's, the majority of the people that vote are gonna want to bond for open space. I mean,
Right.
it's one thing if you want to keep someone else's land open, which is what happened before with the petition and everything. It's another thing when they ask you to keep a checkbook full.
Well,
That's different. That's
now-
totally different.
Right, but this
So-
is all a procedure just to set up. If it is
If it
approved,
happens.
we've got everything taken
It's
care
already,
of. We've worked it out.
So
Move forward.
and I totally get that, but I think it's important to mention that there's a lot of things that have to happen
That's true.
before we get down this road, but it's good to be moving in the right direction.
So Steve, do you think that maybe redrafting some portion of the bylaws to handle disagreements?
There's really no bylaws set up for this.
Well, I mean, for what you're proposing.
Yeah, it's for this
Disagreement?
board to come back with some bylaws and some guidelines.
Yeah, the
Scenarios.
Yeah.
WOLP.
So you're saying create the board first and have the board create those bylaws?
Basic rules.
Did he want more than one member of the? to be on
Yes,
board?
some do. Some do.
And we have to wait until January to see what the majority says.
That's probably a good idea. But,
Well,
I know you want
I
to go
don't
faster
know.
than that.
And what we've kind of done is broken down the taxable value. If he were sitting with the majority of the taxable value, I would say yes, they could have more than one.
Understand?
but they're not. They're just a few percentages higher than Midway.
Really?
Who is it?
Yeah, the unincorporated county area is by far the highest taxable value when you include Jordan Basin.
That was not my suggestion, it was other members of the city council. I don't know if it's a majority
And
or
if
not.
we base it on population, you'd be right.
There you
But
go.
we're talking taxable value because that's what it's going to be.
Well, and maybe that just needs to be pointed out when the voting actually happens, right?
I don't, talking about that, and I apologize if they've already gone over this, it's not on this list of talking. No, it wasn't nominated, just had to take a impression, but it's not on these talking points, but the red line that I think Smedley gave to you guys for the October 5th
Those
meeting,
were his.
under 3A, I noticed 3A,
6.
well, it's 1 through 5, where it talks about the boards.
Oh,
And he had a 7-member, he says, should one be from county, one from Heber, one from Midway, one from Charleston, one from Daniel, and 2 at large, or 1 from the chamber. That's where you get the 7. But you're now talking, I'll have to visit with somebody after on where the 14.
No, the 14
Well,
is
that was just a majority of the legislative bodies in the 3 major.
Oh, okay, you're adding up all of those, yeah. So, I mean, it to me, as I looked at that, you know, different than what we had, it almost makes sense to have Charleston and Daniel on there. There might be some open space identified,
or Walsburg too.
or Walsburg too, they're not on this list.
There was a lot.
But both of them, or all 3 of them, have zoning that encourages large parcels. And they're in a big, well, they don't have sewer, water, they're in a big demand growth area at this
Yeah.
point.
So they're in the.
Now, there's no reason we can't add them at a later date.
That's true.
As their situation changes.
The problem you got, if you get this board too big, it's not going to be effective or functional.
Well, as we talked, 7 was a reasonable number.
I agree. There was
Now,
this-
there's no reason this Wasatch Open Land Board can't create some advisory board, different advisory boards to look at different aspects.
That would report back to them.
And that was what was really laid out here.
Just so you know, on our council, there was quite a bit of pushback of the county appointing city members. And so that's one thing that I think.
Is that
strong.
I don't see any reason why you guys can pick your own
Oh, yeah.
council member to
That
represent
makes
them.
sense, that counts, I think, so.
Okay.
If we had a commitment that you'd do it.
I
But
understand.
like on the Affordable Housing Board, we go months without a nominee from,
I tried, but.
It's that
that's another story.
3A6 was what that's what
I
you're talking
think, I
about.
think the actual board is one thing, to get together, kick this off, get the bylaws going. When it comes to spending money, that's a different item. That's different. That's why I think it's important everybody agree on the spending the money part. The getting things rolling and making the thing
All right.
functional,
You're assuming
All
the
right.
bond gets passed.
Yeah, you're making some
all right,
assumptions
but
before.
the ultimate decision on who's going to spend the money is right here within the 7 of us.